I'm Grace Macaluso. I'm the automotive reporter at the Windsor Star. I'm here with Jeff Watson, who is the Conservative MP for the riding of Essex. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
And we're going to talk a little bit today about automotive investment in our region.
Right.
And there's been a lot of controversy surrounding that issue.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the recent Ford discussions.
Yes, okay.
And we, of course, know that the discussions between the automaker and Ottawa Queen's Park did not result in an agreement.
Right.
And there have been some allegations that the reason talks went south is because we lack a national auto policy. I'd like you to address that.
Well, I don't think anything could be further from the truth. Not only was I present when we launched our National Auto Action Plan in 2008, but the then Canadian Auto Workers Union executive members were also present when Jim Prentice, who was our industry minister at the time, laid down some of the pillars of our important strategy. Everything from ensuring that we have solid economic fundamentals like low taxes, trade agreements that give us market access, but also the building what I like to say is the North American car, making regulatory progress where we don't have a tyranny of small differences. That's important to automakers. Thirdly, I should say, important research and development. How do we bring the high-paying white-collar jobs that come with automotive assembly back into Canada? And then our fourth is having an automotive innovation fund to secure investments, not just in early stage design and prototyping, but the actual facilities and flexible manufacturing to do that. We've been building on that strategy, obviously, and in the context of the Ford discussions, I think we demonstrated we had a lot of things to put on the table, both federally. The province, of course, has a value proposition to put on the table. In the end, our concern was that Ford did, the things we thought we were getting in the agreement, Ford in the end didn't come through with, including the 1,000 jobs.
Mm-hmm. And so the end result was that Ford's initial promise, I guess, had been diminished throughout the negotiations.
Yeah, I would say the starting point was far better than the end point in this one in terms of what they had on the table, including, as I understand it, and I think there are reports on this now, that in the end they were only offering 600 jobs and not any other additional commitments around that, and still expecting an investment that would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% of the facility. So. That brings obviously into question not just what the federal government may put on the table or what the provincial government may put on the table, but in fact, what do our unions put on the table, because they're in a competitive environment with respect to labor and what they control, and what are our expectations at the end of the day from automotive companies themselves. What do they think is a fair deal? What do they expect taxpayers should be supporting? Is it just enough to have the direct jobs, or, as I think has been the strategy of the federal and provincial governments, should the direct jobs and investment be leveraged to grow the supply chain, to grow the research and development chain in Canada? That has been the strategy and approach of senior levels of government. I think it's one that's defensible to taxpayers and one that's reasonable to ask from our automakers. So, but that, there's four players that make a deal work in the end, and all four of them have to be doing their part.
Now, Ford hasn't officially announced that this investment that was going to total, I think, about $1.5 billion, and would have brought a new small engine program to the Windsor facilities. The automaker hasn't officially announced that that investment is going to Mexico. However, there are some groups locally who hope that there's still hope for the talks between the automaker and the government to resume. And as you know, there's a petition that's being circulated.
Yes.
That's been launched by some of the Ford workers locally. And you were, let's hear your thoughts on this, because you were accused of not supporting the petition.
It's launched out of the Union Hall, first of all. Let's be clear about that. The union's approach since the story broke has been a political approach. I don't think it's any secret they don't like our government and would like to see us go, notwithstanding what we've done both to reopen Essex engine plant or for the broader auto sector, including the restructuring of Chrysler and GM. They just I'm sure they're happy for that, but they just like to see our government go. But with respect to a petition, I haven't put a petition in my office in 10.5 years. That's just a straight across the board policy. But on the substance of the petition, or what I understand to be the substance of the petition, it's pure politics, and it's false. The government has a national auto strategy. I've been clear with the union, local unions prior to that. The only debate now is what elements really go into an auto strategy, perhaps at the federal and provincial level. But we have to get beyond the nonsense and the flat-out lie. Let's be clear, it's a lie. There is an auto strategy. There has been one since 2008, and it's getting results for Canada and for Ontario. But you know, let's finally put to bed. And the other myth out there is that somehow 1,000 jobs were lost in the negotiations as a result of federal government and provincial governments not being committed. The resolve was there. I think all the reports are clear now that up to 60% of an investment, as opposed to a traditional combined 20%. But you know, 600 jobs and no other guarantees coming out of it. I think people understand that that's reasonable. So, you know, it wasn't a lack of resolve on the part of governments to secure the investment, but we should expect from automakers, you know, that they have some commitment here as well.
And just my last question deals with the Honda Canada announcement to invest, I think, over $800 million in Alliston. The Ontario government is contributing 10% of that investment. There was no involvement by the federal government. I had an opportunity to speak to the Honda Canada president about that, and his view was that at the federal level there was nothing for them to plug into, to tap into with respect to this particular investment. What they liked about the provincial government offerings is that they offered grants as opposed to loans.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not that the federal government has nothing to offer Honda. For example, they're going to benefit by low corporate taxes. They can retool their factories and fill it with tariff-free imported machinery, because the machinery is made in Japan or it's made in Germany or whatever. They get the 2-year capital cost write-off on all of their investment in equipment. So they'll benefit by a variety of things, including a European free trade agreement as well, where they'll gain some additional access out of Ontario, for example. The only preference I understand out of Honda is that they don't like a non-repayable, or sorry, a repayable contribution over time. Fair enough, that's one automaker, but if you look at all the rest of the automakers, including other Japanese transplants here, like Toyota, they're using the Auto Innovation Fund in addition to what the province offers. Oakville, the 10% investment there out of the Auto Innovation Fund not only leveraged the immediate announcement of jobs, but an additional 1,000 jobs. So automakers are using it. Governments are demonstrating, I think, as we've gotten into more recent discussions with Ford and Chrysler before it, there's strong resolve to do more in terms of the level of our repayable contributions. But you know, we'll see how those discussions progress. Perhaps Chrysler will come back to the table. That would be good news for this community. But I think people here in the community have to rest assured that not only the federal government, not only does it have a strategy that's been in place for years, but we've been beefing up the amount of money on the table in subsequent budgets, making the tools more robust, because we're committed to seeing this particular sector not just sort of stay or retain. We want to see it grow, and we think we've got the resolve to make that happen, and the tools.
Great. Thank you very much,
You're
Jeff.
welcome. Thank you.